NSG with Melanie Oliveiro.
Yes, indeed. Made in SG is all about shining the spotlight on people, products, services, trends made in Singapore. Hello, I'm Melanie Oliveiro for CNA 938. Many, if not most of us, would have played a card or board game at some point in our lives. I'm talking about games that require strategy and sometimes cunning, like Monopoly, Cluedo, or Risk. Today's Made in SG will introduce you to a Made in SG card game called Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize. And this card game not only helps you encourage end-of-life planning, but you'll also assume the persona of a fictitious person who may one day inherit the vast wealth of a dying man. His name is Peter Devon, who is also a fictitious character. So you might just have access to all of Peter's wealth if you literally play your cards right. Wheel of Fortune comes in a purple box for easy storage, and contained inside are the game cards and a rule book as well. It was a collaborative effort between students from NUS Business School and a Singapore startup called Immortalize, an online elderhood marketplace and information provider. Let's welcome to Made in SG, Regina Tan, co-founder of Immortalize. Hi, Regina. Welcome to CNA 938.
Hi, Melanie, and good afternoon to everyone who's listening in right now.
All right, everyone. If you've got a question really for Regina, since she has welcomed you to this chat, and we always do, you know what to do if you want to ask her about certain aspects of the game, because she's the expert here. The number to WhatsApp us is 963-11938. Okay, Regina. Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize started first as a project by a team of 4 Bachelor of Business Administration or BBA students from the NUS Business School. And the catalyst for it was when one of the students' grandmother was affected by Alzheimer's disease, and the family was unable to do thorough end-of-life planning as a result because of this poor grandma, what she was going through. How did these students contact Immortalize with their pitch? Or was it an ongoing relationship you have with NUS Business School?
Yeah, so I would attribute this actually to an ongoing relationship we have with NUS Business School. So First thing, Immortalize being a company that helps people with elder-related issues, end-of-life planning. I mean, with aging, that's just an obvious thing to plan for. Everyone pass away at some point in time. Yeah. But what we realized was that there's a huge social stigma and bias against talking about planning or even thinking about such topic, especially in an Asian society like ours. It's a taboo. Nobody really thinks about it, and when you think about it, people think that it's bad luck. So we knew we needed to change the perception on things, because if you look like countries like US, Europe, Australia, for example, they're a lot more open in terms of knowing that this inevitable will come eventually. So we knew we wanted to gamify this conversation, but we don't know how we're going to go about doing it. That's why we reach out to NUS, and NUS actually has a program. A business school actually have a program where you give them certain problem statements, and interested students can actually sign up and basically work with your company to solve the problem. And that's kind of where we brought the problem statement to. Mm-hmm. And we were very fortunate that there was a group of students, Mandy, Yushen, Yap Sing, and Jonathan, if you guys are listening to this. They actually could relate to this problem, and they were also very interested in creating a game. So it's somewhat different from the other problem statements that you see out there as well. So that's kind of where the connection or the connection happened between us and them being able to relate, because they also have many other projects that they could choose from, but they chose us in that sense.
So tell us about this collaborative process to produce the game Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize.
Yeah. So on our end, Immortalize-wise is very straightforward. We knew certain key goals that we wanted the student to achieve. It needs to be fun, very importantly, because there are some other games out there, but it's more like a questionnaire. And when you ask people to play a questionnaire game on end of life, they're not going to be interested. So the key criteria we gave the students were, it needs to be fun first. It needs to be a game first, then an educational too. It needs to be engaging, and most importantly, it has to be repeatedly playable. Right. Because end-of-life topics and the tools around it is not something where, for example, lasting power of attorney. Yeah. You're not going to remember it the one time you play it. So that's why we require it to be repeatedly playable. And through playing this game many times, hopefully people get familiarized with these names. And by associating this terms, this a little bit more intimidating terms to this fun times that you have, we hope that through this initiative, it breaks down the barrier. So we just gave them the task. And to be really honest, the students pretty much took hold of it. They look at what makes a game successful. So they took in elements from many different games and basically created their own. And to be really honest, when I first started working with them, I wasn't expecting much. I didn't expect the first version that they came out with would be something that we commercialize. But I think because they could relate to the whole topic and all this sort of stuff, they really put in a lot of effort and they were really smart and all this sort of things. And that when they presented us this solution, I was like, wow, this is really amazing. And even to the point of choosing the name. So we had many other options and we chose this for a reason.
Very clever.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And it's all the students' effort, not ours.
So that means when it came to planning what exactly this game constitutes, right?
Yeah.
Is that them or they work together with you to think of the different cards and the way it should be played? And then you gave them your input.
Okay, so in terms of the mechanism of the game, it definitely came from the students. So what Immortalize did was actually to create, so they created a skeleton and we add on the meat to the skeleton. So basically, for example, we know something called estate planning tools. Maybe the student will be using something simple like lasting power of attorney, will, but we will be adding on advanced medical directive, advanced care plan, things that you'd hear the governments talk about, but most people have no idea what it is, trusts and things like that. So we added to give it a little bit more depth while they created the structure to make it fun, engaging and repeatedly playable. So that's kind of how the collaboration worked.
It worked very well. I did see your AMD card and it is very, very current and topic. Okay, before we talk about how to play the game, Regina, we must say it's based on fictitious plots and characters. Fictitious in that sense. Wheel of Fortune is a bit like the game Clue or Cluedo, because we used to play it when we were younger, of course, Cluedo, where players can assume the role of a character. So like Cluedo's Colonel Mustard and Mrs. Peacock, there are in Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize personas, and they are named, for example, Regina Wong and Nyap Singh Devan, for example. Can you tell us more about how you and the team created these personas? Because for one, I'm assuming that since Singapore is a multiracial country, you also wanted to introduce a mixed race marriage to this game. So tell us more about how you created them.
Yes, and well spotted actually. So this game started off as a Chinese family, but Immortalize brought it and we're like, no, it has to be multiracial because it's a made in Singapore game. So first thing, it relates to which game. Actually, do you play Cluedo?
A long time ago with my sister and brother, yes.
Yeah. So what happens is that when we test it out with different people, and people, there usually is ankle bias. They usually relate to what they play. Or play often, or what they're familiar with. So that's what interesting about what the students did was that they took in elements from many different games and somehow people could relate it to their games. Oh, this feels like Monopoly. This feels like Uno. Something along that line. So I think that's what's great about what the student did with this game. It's not really one game per se. It's the elements that makes many different games successful. That's the first thing. And in terms of the character-wise, yes. So we were very intentional. So first thing you need to know is that for this game, there's no Muslim. And the reason why that's the case is because Muslim is subjected to different far distribution, different estate planning laws, Sharia law. So it's different. So we're very specific, nothing Muslim in that. There was only a card that basically teaches people that if you are Muslim, you're subjected to a different law, Sharia law. But in any case,
it's good that you put that card in.
Yes,
you know,
just so people will know.
So even if our Muslim friends want to play that game, and of course they can,
yes,
at least there's a card there that makes it inclusive.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right. So but the characters wise, we're very careful because once you have a Muslim, it's a different story altogether. So we, as you know, Peter Devan, so we call him Peter Devan. So he's the main protagonist of the story where he's basically, so then in the game itself, you'll see there's an Angmor in there, the friend. So there's a Caucasian.
The Caucasian, yes, that's
so
right.
Just making it a bit more Singaporean. And also, of course, you have Chinese. So basically, it's an Indian-Chinese marriage. And we wanted the game to be a little bit more dramatic because why do people want to take on different personas? Because they want to lead a different life or play games or things like that. That's the kind of idea. So we had the ex-wife who's also the current mistress to make the story a little bit more scandalous, a little bit more K-drama. So that's kind of the angle that we're going for in terms of story plot. But yes, but in the case of the characters, it's really, we pick an Indian specifically and Chinese family specifically to basically highlight the racialness of Singapore and give it a bit more Singapore flavor.
So the Regina character was named after you.
Yes. So if you look at the game itself, so we were thinking about many different names, right? So basically, people who worked on the game, we wanted to let this be the student's legacy, or whoever worked on the game. This is your legacy as much as it is immortalized. So to basically immortalize them, in a way, we basically use their name. So the creators of the game are Yuxuan. So you will see the Yuxuan card in there, Mandy, Nyap Singh, and Jonathan. So they are all in there. And yes, I am Regina Wong in the game, who is the ex-wife and current mistress.
Are you okay with being the mistress,
that's the
Regina?
fun part. I like to be a villain.
Oh, okay. So you bring out your villainous side in the card game. Okay, no judgment there. Okay, we'll take it. Okay, take us through the 5 different categories of cards. They are, we talked about just now, persona, strategy, planning, hiring, and legacy. How do we use each one? Let's begin. So we've talked about persona already. Let's talk about the rest.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit more on persona as well. So basically, we start with persona. Each persona that you take on will have a different special power, which you can either use at the beginning of the game or at the end of the game. So the idea is that with each game, so I mentioned earlier, repeated playability. So each game, you could be taking on different persona and have different advantage. And different persona would mean you would need to acquire different strategy throughout the game. So that's kind of what the persona cards play. And then basically and the rest of the cards is a little bit like real life. So we have the hiring card. Basically, they represent the professionals you can hire. So the one thing questions we always get from people is that, I want to do my end of life planning, but where should I start from? Is it a lawyer? Is it a doctor? Is it a funeral director? That's different contact point where you start. So that's kind of where we want to give people a big picture. In general, these are some of the people that operates in the end of life planning industry that you can start your process of course, different angles. So that's the hiring marketplace. Once you hire a professional, they can basically help you in making a better planning in real life. But in the game, it basically gives you a better odds of winning because each of them have a special power. So that's really mimic in real life. And then you have your legacy cards. So legacy cards is where we actually introduce people to the various tools.
Yeah.
So to give you some context, this version of WOFI, or Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize, is actually a beginner's version. So the whole end-of-life topic is really huge. There's a lot of depth involved, a lot of content. How do we get people? So when we first started with the student, we try to pack everything in it, and we realized that it's too overwhelming for people. So I don't know whether you guys play Plants vs. Zombie. So with all games, it's a staggered way of difficulty. So with each level, they add one additional difficulty. So for the beginner's version of this game, which is what you see right now, it's actually just introducing people to the terms and tools, familiarizing. But I don't tell you, if you don't have an LPA, for example, lasting power of attorney, what happens? What are the implications? So we actually have we are working on a second version called the WOFI Advanced version, where once you're familiar with the terms, let's move on to the implication of things. So anyway, back to the legacy planning cards. So basically the cards introducing 4 categories. One is the estate planning tools available out there people can consider. The other one, insurance and retirement, which is heavily penetrated in the financial industry, so I don't touch that as much. Funeral and memorabilia, for example, we have smart columbariums in Singapore, and people have no idea what these things are. And the last one would be documents. So document is where, out of the 4 cards, for example, document is the only one that we make everyone read what it is. So what is in the document card? Lasting power of attorney, advanced medical directive, advanced care plan, grant of probate, and grant of letters of administration. So a lot of key jargony words.
Yeah.
This is the only 5 things we make you read the word. Everything else, technically, you can play without reading it.
Those are the basics. Okay. In 2 minutes, that's your pitch. And also because we need to go to the news. Let us know how we can play Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize. Now we've got all our cards, we know what to do. Take it away, Regina. Not the mistress, but the actual immortalized person.
Yes, correct. So my recommendation is first, watch the video that we have, because with all new games, you need a big picture of what's happening there. So we do have a video on our website to basically give you a big picture idea. And then once you have that, the rule book is the way to go. Most people that we have tested out with, after they watch the video, they don't have much issue. Maybe there are some questions here and there which will be addressed by the rule book. So then it's a turn-based based game where you take your legacy cards, you play your strategy. I think that's the general idea because it's hard to go into details in that sense.
But the video will show you how to deal your
Yes.
cards, how many cards we should take.
Yes.
If there are 2 or more people in the game, the number of cards also is different per
Yes.
group as well.
Yes.
And then there are demonstrations as well as to how to play this game.
And how the game ends. That's when Peter
Yes.
is out of his last breath. So that's when the game ends, and you basically tabulate the points and the winner with the most points. And the points is not as much as easy as just collect as many as possible because so different categories. So I told you 4 categories. Different categories will have a different scoring system, and the scoring system itself has to relate a lot to real life why we did it that way. So for example, estate planning 2, the more you collect, the more points you get. Why? Because you should learn more about how to you more efficiently plan for your estate. For documents, you only need 1 of each. Any additional will not give you additional points because lasting power of attorney, you only need 1.
Correct.
In fact, you cannot have 2. So that's kind of where if you look really closely into the scoring system, it's really closely related to what we want to tell people in real life.
What a fascinating game this is. And you, whether you are the late Peter's son or daughter or his mistress or his current wife or his foreign friend, you can play those cards right and hopefully get access to his money and learn about real estate planning. Regina Tan is the co-founder of Immortalize, an online elderhood marketplace and information provider. To find out more about how to get the card game Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize, visit immortalize.io or look out for them on your favorite social media platform. This is Made in SG, and I'm Melanie Oliveiro for CNA 938. Regina and I will be back after some news updates. And yes, indeed, I'm Melanie Oliveiro for CNA 938, and back with me is Regina Tan, co-founder of Immortalize, an online elderhood marketplace and information provider. And we're talking about the immersive strategy card game that helps you master legacy planning. It's called Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize. Hey, Regina, let's talk a little bit more about that rule book, because there's that rule book and also the video tutorial in which we can QR code scan, because this QR code is on the rule book itself. So that will bring us to the tutorial on how to play the game. So what has been the feedback when it comes to this tutorial so far? It's quite comprehensive and it takes all of 10 minutes for us to watch it, right?
Yes. Actually, there's a lot that goes into creating this video. So first thing, if you realize, actually quite slow. I'm not too sure about you, but for me wise, I usually watch it if I do watch it, it will be 2 times speed. So the reason why, because Immortalize targets the matured aging audience. So while we feel that the first uptake will be the younger generation, at the end of the day, we want to create something that caters to the older generation, and they may not be able to watch a video as fast. For the older generation, for example, younger generation, if it's too slow, they would know how to speed up, watch at 2 times speed. For the elder generation, they don't know how to slow down. So that's why we created the video a little bit slower than usual, just to accommodate for the elder generation as well. But for the younger audience out there, feel free to watch it at 2 times speed. So yes, it's very comprehensive, and at some point we will probably break down the video into many different pieces to basically address specific questions. But so far, based on our test group wise, of course you have a wide variety of people who play games more often. They could pick it up immediately, but for people who don't play games, it's gonna be slower for them. So there's a varying. So for us wise, we can't accommodate for everyone. So we choose the middle, but lower end of the middle, to basically pace where the difficulty of this game and in terms of the amount of things we need to explain to people. So that's kind of the key thing. But in general, so far, as long as you've watched the video and basically addressed the concerns through the rulebook, we haven't found anyone who actually has an issue. But if there's any issue, you can always WhatsApp Immortalize and we'll answer your question. In fact, we do have players from, for example, Australia and New Zealand who bought the game. Someone from Tasmania recently bought the game. And so far, we haven't got any questions for them. It seems like they understood how to play the game.
So they bought it online from your store?
Yes, and I have to send it. And the funny part was the game cost $45.67. The delivery to Tasmania itself cost $35.
Oh my.
Yes, it was insane. And we were like, why? Why did this person bought it? And I mean, I didn't pry much, but that was really interesting for us that someone from Tasmania would be interested in buying a game that's made in Singapore.
They really, really wanted it, lah. They wanted to get their hands on it because they felt, it's something, a game that they want to play with their loved ones, or maybe they felt it was really, really important. How many players can play one Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize game, and how old must they be? I'm assuming starting from their early teens, maybe in their tweens.
Yeah. So you need minimum of 2%,
Yeah.
obviously, because it's a strategy competition kind of game. Ideally, no more than 4, though that's it. I have played with financial advisors with a group of 8 of them. The issue with it is that it's turn-based game. So the more people you have, there's just a lot of waiting time. So that's why we usually recommend between 3 to 4. That will be ideal enough to have competition, to allow for collusion, collaboration, and sabotaging in that sense. So that's where it becomes fun. So 3 to 4, that will be ideal. And in terms of the age-wise, technically speaking, there's no really age limit, because, for example, I played with my nieces. While they understood how to play the game, they don't understand the significance of the things that they are reading. So that's the key issue with it. So generally speaking, like early, maybe above 18, so they start to understand, why do we need to talk about end of life? What is a will? Or when they read like lasting power of attorney, they understand the context. So for my nieces, they are 7 years old. While they know how to play the game, they don't know why.
Oh,
or
primary
what.
1 lah.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct. So it's that. So in terms of who can play, there's many ages. No restriction. But suitability wise, generally we'll say like maybe when you're 18, young adult, or the best part is when you turn 21, because that's when you can actually do things. For example, lasting power attorney, you can't do it until you're 21.
Yeah.
So that's why we generally say, okay, 21 is definitely where you should start. But if you do it earlier, it's good, because then you can encourage your grandparents or your parents to get their things sorted. Because if anything happens to them, you are the one who's going to be dealing with the mess.
Yeah, and it really is, if they don't want to think it's a mess, it really is a very taxing process.
Yeah.
Especially if a will is definitely put together, but all the various information and resources that the will points you to may not be available to you immediately, so you got to go on a hunt.
Yes.
So they need to understand that as well. Not everything is nicely organized for you, even
Yeah.
though a will has been drawn up. Hey, Regina, can you tell us a story of someone who has played this game and benefited from it, or maybe they even needed more instructions on how to play it because they were confused?
All right. So let's put it this way. I think one of the key questions people learn, or key things people learn from the game, is the difference between a will and a lasting power attorney.
Yeah.
So, for example, like prior, people would, there are actually surprisingly a lot of people who think once you do a will, you don't need to do your LPA, or when you do your LPA, you don't do your will. So what people usually forget or confuse about is the trigger factor. A will is after you passed away. LPA is when you're still alive,
Yep.
but you lose mental capacity. So I think what the game does or help people is that when they see certain key things, they will read more into it, and that kind of helps. So I think the most common one that help people, it's the differentiation between will and LPA. Oh, I didn't know there's such thing. And I think the other one is advanced medical directive.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a very intimidating word. And to be honest, a lot of clients actually ask for, I want that kind of documents where I sign already. If, something bad happens to me, they will just let me go. That's so people know how to describe it, but they don't really know what exactly the name is. And there's, you mean this thing is called advanced medical directive? I didn't know that. So
The
I
do
think
not revive request or switch off the machines. That's how some of them refer to it as well.
Yeah, so there's a difference between AMD and do not resuscitate. So it's a
okay,
little bit.
tell us.
Yeah. So basically,
Is that a card as well, the do not resuscitate?
No, there's no such, because the key thing that we champion for in Singapore is the advanced medical directive.
Okay.
When you're terminally ill and unconscious, do you want to be on extraordinary life-sustaining treatment? So I'm going to be a little bit more technical in that sense. So that's the advanced medical directive part. So in places like Malaysia, they don't have such things. Theirs is do not resuscitate, which means that if you see a card I'm holding that says do not resuscitate, regardless of what happens, do not resuscitate me. So that's kind of a little bit different in that sense. So we don't put do not resuscitate more because we're very careful in terms of not touching things that are. So for example, a lot of clients will ask me, can I just get assisted suicide, euthanasia? It's illegal in Singapore.
Yeah, it's illegal. You can't put that card. Yeah.
Exactly. So we don't want to touch anything. We want things that are so like I said, it's a beginner's version. Let's not go too deep details into too many things. Let's focus on the things that it's really important you should consider. Just like AMD, right? Like LPA, to me, I will tell all my clients, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but AMD is a personal choice.
Correct.
So we don't go further into ethical things and all this sort of stuff. So we just inform people, which is where the Immortalize information provision comes in. We'll tell you what are the tools available, but whether you want to use it or not, that's your choice. Yeah, so that's a differentiation part. So anyway, we stay on the more, for the beginner's version, we stay on more politically correct.
Stick with Singapore.
Yes.
That's what you're looking at as well. How has playing this game then, Regina, surprised you sometimes? You said you've played with your daughters, you've played with some people from the finance sector, because sometimes your fate is determined by the cards that the player is dealt with.
Yes. So the interesting part is this game is less like, there's a lot more strategy. So there is no one strategy or card or persona that's going to make you win the game for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's intentional in the game. So there was a little bit more of game theory involved. For example, it depends on what other people are doing. Your actions should be dependent. Of course, where you start from, it's like life.
Yeah.
You know, when everyone are born differently, we have a different starting point. So that's kind of where the persona comes in. But that said, how your life end up would change based on your actions and what other people are doing as well. So that's what is interesting about a game. For example, even for me wise, even though I've been with the game from the very beginning to the end, I'm still learning things as I play. For example, I'm very competitive, and whenever I play with my friends, they would gang up against me. Basically, they would collude. We just want Regina to lose. So I haven't been able to break that strategy. But very recently, I was playing with my friend, and I realized that this card called Heidi, basically she's the nice aunt. So the way to break people fight, basically colluding against you, is to be nice to everyone. So when you start being nice to everyone, they start feeling guilty about bullying you, and then pretty much their cartel will break up because they feel bad bullying the nice person. So that was something we didn't construct it at the beginning, but it came out accidentally because of the game theory components that we included in the game.
And each persona card has a strength.
Correct.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Okay, so like I said just now, the Auntie Heidi, she's nice. So for most people feel that it's a useless, not very useful card until I actually finally found out actually there's a way to use that card. And then there is the Crazy Rich Asian. So the daughter, who's a sport daughter. So we call
the bubble tea one, right?
Yes, correct. The bubble tea one. So it's so if you look at the characters and the images, it's very Singaporean in that sense. So there's a Crazy Rich Asian where you start off with more. But what you don't realize is that, yes, you have a lot more in the sense the money, because you start off with more legacy cards and things like that. But you get basically attacked by other people. So starting with more may not be a good thing in that sense. So you're not very prudent with the way you use things and all this sort of stuff. So then we have, for example, that's one card, the gambler, the uncle.
Oh, the uncle. Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So usually, again, people would usually think that's a very useless card, but in the game, there is one particular strategy, which is to get the life insurance, where you get protection for all your legacy cards. But in any case, when you read through the game, you will know more. So the moment someone attains the life insurance, it feels like it's invincible. And the gambler, which is the uncle, is the only card that can break the game. So that's why, like, every different card has different users, becomes powerful in different situations. So that will summarize it in that sense. For more information, please look at the card.
Yeah, exactly. Check them out. So how can we use this game to better write out a will and then later present it to our lawyer or a will writing services company?
Okay. So I think for us, the first thing we want to help people understand is that when you do your estate planning, legacy planning, end of life planning, will is not the only tool. Will is the most familiar tool that people have, but there's many. Even within will itself, for example, if you have overseas assets, you might want to consider international will, concurrent will. It's not just a will in Singapore. That's it. That could cover everything, because those jurisdictions will utilize different things. So the idea is more to basically let you know that, hey, actually, besides will, there are many different tools out there that you can consider using when you do. And in fact, when you do your estate planning, will is not the only thing that you should be doing. For example, lasting power attorney, advanced care plan, they all go hand in hand, because before you pass pass away, there are things that you need to sort out and things like that. So that's what we try to achieve with the beginner's version of the game. Less to tell you how to write a will, because there's no one right answer. It depends on your specific circumstances. It depends on what you need, what your goal is. So no one can tell you what is the perfect way to write a will. But what I can tell you is that here are the things that you can consider using when you're planning for if something happens to you. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're trying to achieve with the beginner's version. And for the advanced version, we will start telling you the implication. If you do an LPA, what happens to your family? Your family has to go to get deputyship, and that's a few $1,000 and 6 months to start, and so on and so forth.
Wow, so much to consider. Very quickly, because again, I've got to go to the news. What new product will Immortalize be putting out soon that'll interest Singaporeans listening in now?
So we have many products in the pipeline to basically tackle issues such as loneliness, depressions, dementia, and things like that. But I can't review that until we actually develop it and show it to you guys. But at least for now, in terms of the WOFI, since we are on a WOFI Made in Singapore chat, the next thing that we're going to be introducing is actually the WOFI Championship. So we will be going across different parts of Singapore into universities, tertiary education, finance professionals, and so on to basically find the legacy grandmaster. I think that will be the next thing that's happening.
All right. Okay. You tell me all about it. Regina Tan, she's the co-founder of Immortalize, an online elderhood marketplace and information provider. Go to immortalize.io to find out more about how to order their card game, Wheel of Fortune by Immortalize. They're also on the main social media sites. This is Made in SG, and I'm Melanie Oliveiro for CNN 938.